All the vile and irresponsible and stupid things our alleged future president and his gaggle of scumbags chose to say during our darkest and most terrifying hour. The fact that they chose to attack our firefighters, who apparently aren't white enough to be out there risking their lives on our behalf, it's disgusting, but it's not surprising.
In this video, Tim Pool clowns woke fool Jimmy Kimmel. Tim Pool laughs at the fact that Jimmy Kimmel calls California's disastrous DEI policies racist. With that, let's watch Tim Pool roast liberal crybaby Jimmy Kimmel.
Here's a story from Mediaite to kick things off. Jimmy Kimmel breaks down over the fires and bitterly condemns Trump and his, quote, gaggle of scumbags, saying firefighters aren't white enough. Well, as everybody who watches this show knows, we've never criticized firefighters for not being white enough. We've criticized them for not hiring enough firefighters because they don't want white ones, which is totally different. And I assume the gaggle of scumbags comment has to be the supporters of Donald Trump, prominent personalities who have been criticizing DEI policies. But let me play the clip for you. And I'll start by saying I can give Jimmy respect. I'm not going to rag on him for crying over the fires. I mean, maybe an adult man shouldn't be crying like this, fine, but it is terrifying and people are losing their lives. So I can respect anybody who's emotional about this. Here's a clip.
As you know, it has been a very scary, very stressful, very strange week here in LA, where we work, where we live, where our kids go to school. We are back in our studio, which we had to evacuate on Wednesday. That's our building right there, the El Capitan. That is how close this fire was to our theater here. Many of us had to leave our homes in a hurry. Some of our coworkers lost their homes. That's Hollywood. It's been terrible. It's been a terrible. Everyone who lives in the city knows someone, most of us, multiple people, families, friends, colleagues, neighbors whose houses burned down. And the truth is, we don't even know if it's over. We had 100-mile-per-hour winds fueling this nightmare. As of tonight, the winds are back. And I think I speak for all of us when I say it has been a sickening, shocking, awful experience, but has also been, in a lot of ways, a beautiful experience because once again, we see our fellow men and women coming together.
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
Together to support each other. People who lost their own homes were out volunteering in parking lots, helping others who lost theirs. And tonight, I don't want to get into all the vile and irresponsible and stupid things our alleged future president and his gaggle of scumbags chose to say during our darkest and most terrifying hour. The fact that they chose to attack our firefighters, who apparently aren't white enough to be out there risking their lives on our behalf, it's disgusting, but it's not surprising. Instead, I want to focus on thanking those men and women because that's all we should be doing right now.
We got to do it. We got to call out the lies on the corporate press.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, let me say, who's his gaggle of scumbags? He's not talking about his administration because none of these people are doing press right now. He's talking about the supporters, the prominent people in media, people like us, who have rightly criticized that the LA Fire Department is understaffed. They've been complaining for years about having too many white people. Adam Carolla pointed out that as a white man, he was held back for 7 years, and these policies have made it more difficult to fight these fires. Now, there is other news. A new fire erupted called the Auto Fire. The winds are picking up. It's going to get bad. So when I see this video and they're all laughing and cheering and clapping at lies, this has been the problem the whole time with the corporate press, the mainstream narrative. How do we solve the problem of these massive wildfires if the people who live in these areas don't actually know what we're saying, what the problem is?
I don't know that there is a solution on the horizon for these wildfires because the people in positions of authority are just passing the buck. People like Jimmy Kimmel are blaming, their political opponents or people that they dislike their politics for.
I appreciate what Tim's saying, but it doesn't matter if they know what we're saying. That they are so brainwashed and indoctrinated there. They could hear our message loud and clear, and probably many of them do, but all they know how to do is blame things on the other side. Now, when it comes to passing blame out, I think there's plenty of evidence that Karen Bass is a nightmare. Their ridiculous DEI policies are a nightmare. And by the way, not wanting DEI doesn't mean that anyone wants something to be whiter or for them to hire more white people. What it means is you want the best person for the job. We'd like, call me crazy, a meritocracy. And everyone loves to blame Donald Trump for a division in this country. How about people like Jimmy Kimmel? So assuming that myself and anyone watching this that's a Trump supporter are the gaggle of scumbags. So according to Jimmy Kimmel, Donald Trump and us are attacking Los Angeles firefighters. I shouldn't have to say this, but anybody, firefighters, first responders, neighbors, anyone who is helping in this horrible situation in California, I thank you, and I pray for every single person there, genuinely. And I would hope that would be the mindset of anybody, regardless of your side of the aisle. But Jimmy Kimmel just sounds like a little kid that's upset, obviously, because he's crying. And he's looking for somebody to blame, and he wants to look everywhere but inward. So he has his very easy go-to target that he knows, 48% of the country will get on board with if he attacks Donald Trump. It's the laziest argument at this point, isn't it? Like any political argument, if you go straight to Donald Trump, it's starting to be an indicator that you don't have a clue what you're talking about, because it's just the laziest, easiest argument to have. Well, Donald Trump's bad. It's his fault. It's just like comedians that do Donald Trump material. Not like Shane Gillis. Like, he's hilarious. He does a great Donald Trump. But you know what I mean? Like Saturday Night Live, where they went through phases where I used to love that show. And they went through phases where a long phase actually recently, where every other joke is about Donald Trump. Even if it was funny, like when you hear it for the 1000th time, it's not funny anymore. I resent that show because I used to love it so much, and now I refuse to watch it. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
For the being the problem. So I don't see a solution. I don't see how anything gets fixed. The government of California has been a single party government for at least 3 decades, probably longer. I don't know when the last time they had a genuine conservative or a person of a different political opinion, and that just leads to all kinds of terrible results for the population, regardless of which side it is, right? So if hypothetically, if it was all Republicans in one state all the time for 3 decades, you would get the same kind of falling in line and everyone just going through the same motions all the time, because that kind of ideological uniformity does nothing but breed corruption. We're getting it out of Washington right now. 4% or 5% of DC voted for Donald Trump as opposed to Kamala Harris. It's a terrible thing when you have uniformity of political opinion, because you have people that are terrified to step out of line and say, no, this is a bad policy.
Yeah, I'd play devil's advocate just a little bit on this with the one issue here, because for me, it's like about the timing a little bit, right? The insensitivity of what happened, right? So there has to be a moratorium to some degree of like horrible tragedy, horrible fire. And I fear sometimes that we all do this. We jump on narratives right away. It's like, let's just have empathy for people that are, we don't want to be rooting for this so that we can have an I told you so moment or anything along those lines. And obviously, then you look at some of the issues like, why did this happen, right? Then you start to hold the people accountable. Maybe we're at that time where we start to look at that and the different reasons, whether, there's evidence that specifically the DEI was a culprit here. I don't know that you have that. You certainly have negligence, it appears. I'm not a fire guy, so maybe, an expert.
I know you've all heard this 1,000 times, but the whole definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That's like the mind-boggling thing to me. It's like I can see both sides. I can see the groupthink and the mob mentality and the liberal infection that's pervasive in California, and I understand, and that's why I always say I don't blame voters for being indoctrinated and lied to. But at the same time, I see the other side is my point about insanity. Like, how long do Democrats need to fail a state, locality, city, whatever, before you're like, it's like Trump said when he, to Black Americans, what have you got to lose? What do you have to lose by electing a Republican in your state in a high office? They literally can't do any worse than your leadership has done. It is so bad. They waste money. They spend money on the stupidest things that don't ever solve any of their problems. And I'm not well versed enough in this right now to articulate everyone who's responsible for everything in this thing. But I know for a fact, Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, their name just always seems to come up. Well, first of all, I know Gavin Newsom is an evil, complete piece of shit, but Karen Bass's name comes up all the time, not just because she's the mayor of a very large city, but her name always comes up when shit goes wrong. Even the residents, even these Democrats that keep voting for Democrats out there can't stand Karen Bass right now. But it's so weird to me that they'll continue to keep voting for her. But the priority at this moment, like I've said, is just praying for the folks out there, supporting them any way you can, and remembering that we're all human beings. But when hopefully, God willing, soon these things get contained and they can start rebuilding, there has to be some people held accountable for this. There has to be repercussions, because by no means am I an expert in fire management, but it's not like you weren't prepared for this. It's not like you don't know what measures you can take to give yourself the best chance to minimize the spread of these fires. So there needs to be an investigation in what went wrong. And all these factors are variables in it: DEI, terrible leadership, diverting money. But they really need to get down to brass tacks and specify these are the hundreds of missteps they made. Who's responsible for them? What's unfortunate is that I fear will happen what always happens. Well, there'll be an investigation. They'll identify all these things, but nothing will change. No one will be held accountable. That's one of the biggest injustices of our political system today, is politicians and other elected officials never being held accountable for the damage they cause in situations like these. Anyway, let's wrap up the video.
Expert can say so. I know that many firemen have spoke out previously saying, like, all we need is one win and we're screwed. I'm like, if we knew that, we knew this 6 years ago, we know this now, like, why wasn't everything being done? Like, who pays more taxes than people in California? What are you paying for?
I completely agree. I think the issue here is, I would agree incompetence plays a much bigger role than diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
They didn't fill the reservoirs. They didn't build new reservoirs, and understaffing may have an issue. There may be DEI involved in understaffing to a degree, but the bigger picture is general mismanagement.
Yep.
In this regard, though, Jimmy Kimmel's going on like a major late night show, one of the most prominent in the country, and misrepresenting the criticism that we have, which is largely mismanagement, and then trying to make it look like not specifically me, but the people in this space and Donald Trump are angry that there's too many people who aren't white as firefighters.
Yeah, Tim and Daniel Negreanu there literally articulated much better than I did exactly what I was saying. We need to have empathy and concern for those being affected right now. But the questions that citizens and the government needs to ask when this is mitigated is, where the hell is all our tax money going? We pay more taxes than anyone on earth. And if you knew there was a major risk, how are you possibly not better prepared for this? But we want to hear from you. What did you all think about Tim Pool's criticism of Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Kimmel's whole response to the wildfires in California? And also, anybody who might be watching this that lives in Los Angeles or close to there, has loved ones affected by it, I'm praying for you, and please stay safe and stay strong, and I know you'll get through this. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.